Hey guys, it's Maya here with another video. I do apologize, first of all, the audio might sound a little bit different than my other videos because I'm currently actually in a dorm room. I'm back at school to do some summer things, which I'm pretty excited about, if anyone cares about my personal life. But yeah, just wanted to say that, on with the video. Today I will be showing you guys how to make various versions of my mushroom charm earrings. Obviously, these techniques can be applied to loads of other things, not just mushroom beads, but I thought that these earrings were cute and they're my personal favorites, so I will be showing you guys how to make them in this video. Here is a simpler version for people who just want basic charm earrings, and then I will be showing you after that how to make the more complicated version to the left, which does require a bit more technique, especially wire wrapping technique, but I think it's worth it because I think they're really cool. Anyways, yeah, that's today's video. You can skip to either tutorial depending on which one you want to watch. If you are just a beginner, I would suggest starting with the simpler version. You can make them in loads of colors. I will link all the materials I used below, and then I will also get more in depth about the materials later on in this video. So yeah, feel free to skip around to whatever section you would like. And yeah, I think that's basically it. So let's get started. If you are a returning viewer of mine, you will know that I always start out with the materials. So here are the materials you'll need for this video. First, you will need a set of pliers. This is just the most basic set off of Amazon. They're pretty cheap, but from left to right, there are flat nose pliers, round nose pliers, and cutters. Cutters can technically be replaced with scissors, although I don't recommend it because scissors obviously are not meant for cutting wire. The round nose pliers, I would say, are the most important. They are what enables you to make loops and the swirls and stuff like that. And then the flat nose pliers are just in general useful. So yeah, I would recommend all three. Alrighty, next is wire, obviously, since this is a wire jewelry tutorial. This is a whole random assortment of the wire that I use. On the left is 18 gauge wire, and then on the right is 28 gauge wire. So that's kind of the range that I'll be working in. The ones that I'm holding up right now, this is also 18 gauge wire, it's just in silver, and then the one to the right is 22 gauge wire, and then this one is also 22 gauge wire. Alrighty, anyways, I don't know why I got replicas. But yeah, you will use mostly these gauges in this tutorial, and I'll obviously say what they're used for later on in the video. And because these are earrings, you will obviously need some sort of thing to attach the earring to your ear. So these are just two types that I use. The one on the left is a huggy type lever back. I'm not really sure what to call them. And then the one on the right is the standard hook. So yeah, I will also link those in the description box. For me, I tend to use either gold-plated or stainless steel / sterling silver earring hooks. Those are fine for me. If your ears are a bit more sensitive, I would recommend either gold-filled, solid gold if you can afford it, or sterling silver. Next, you will need a whole bunch of beads, obviously. This is just my mushroom bead collection. Now, if you just want to finish the simple earring design, you can stop right here. These are all the beads that you will need. But if you want to complete the more complicated design, you will need a few more beads. First are these leaf beads that I got from Joann's. They're glass, they're honestly kind of fragile, so just be careful if you get them from Joann's and are handling them. But yeah, I think they just add a really nice element of nature to the bottom of the mushroom earring design. For the more complicated mushroom earring design, you will also need these tiny seed beads. I forget the diameter, I'll put them in the description box or maybe on the screen. But yeah, you'll need those tiny beads in green or whatever other color you'd like. And then you will also need these larger seed beads. You'll need 2 of them. And that is it. Let's get started with the simple mushroom earring design. To begin making this design, I would grab your 2 mushroom charms, set them aside, you'll need them very soon. You'll also need your 22 gauge wire, which I showed in the supplies section earlier. You can technically use anywhere from 18 to 22 gauge, but I will use 22 gauge for the sake of ease because it's obviously thinner, so it's easier to manipulate. And then you'll also need your earring hooks or whatever attachment you choose. So to start, grab your 22 gauge wire and put your mushroom on it head first so that the bottom is facing the end of the wire. Next, with your round nose pliers, create a small loop at the end of the wire and then bend it at 90 degrees. Next, you're going to use your flat nose pliers to kind of pinch the loop shut, make sure it's firm and it's kind of small, and then that will act as your stopper for the mushroom, so it won't slide off the wire. Now you'll want to grab your round nose pliers, and before cutting any wire, so the wire is still attached, you will want to create a loop using the round nose pliers and then start winding that wire around the original stem. This is just to secure the loop a little bit. You can just cut the wire at around 1 centimeter and create a loop, but that won't be as firm and secure, so I would recommend this sort of spiral technique to make sure that the loop doesn't open. Next, when you're happy with how many times you've wound the wire around the stem, you can cut it and then just make sure to complete the spiral by pinching the wire towards the stem of the mushroom so that it doesn't poke anyone. And then once you're done fiddling around with it, your first mushroom is complete. You can set that aside and do the exact same thing with the second mushroom.
It doesn't have to be this way. I don't have to wash away the pain with liquid courage, liquid courage. I lick the scourge, lick the scourge.
Once you're done with both mushroom charms, you'll want to set them aside and then start working with the earring attachments, the hooks or the hoops or whatever. Now, make sure that the loop at the bottom of whatever hook that you're using is openable. If it isn't, you'll want to use the previous technique I described, where you take your mushroom charm, slide it on the wire, make the stopper, and then cut the wire about 1 centimeter above the top of the mushroom and just create a simple loop that you can still open and close with your pliers. This way you can still put it on the hoop or the hook without actually having to open the earring attachment. But yeah, as you can see, these hooks are openable, so you'll just want to open the loop slightly with your pliers, slide on the mushroom charm, and then close it up securely. And do that with both mushrooms, and you're done, basically. Alrighty, now that we're done with the more simple design, let's move on to the more complicated design. The first thing I do is always gather all the beads that I will need for the design. I grab the leaves later, but these are most of the beads that you will need for this design. I will also grab my wire. For this design, you'll need 3 separate gauges. One is 18 gauge, another is 22 gauge, and then the third is 28 gauge. And I will show you guys how to use each of them as we go along. Right now on screen, I only have 2 gauges, but don't worry, you'll definitely need all 3. We'll start with the 18 gauge wire to make the swirl of the mushroom earring. Now, I will say this swirl does take a few tries to practice and make perfect. I definitely did not get it on the first time because swirls are a little bit difficult to complete based on the pressure and the amount of wire that you're using. So yeah, just let yourself practice a few times before you actually try to make it for the earrings. Anyways, first you will take your round nose pliers and with the 18 gauge wire, start creating a tiny loop at the end of the wire, but don't close it all the way. Instead of closing it, you will just continue winding the wire around and turning your pliers until a spiral starts forming. Now at this point in the spiral, where you've come around about 360 degrees, you're going to take your round nose pliers and actually form a loop, and this will be the loop that attaches the actual earring to the hook. So you will create that loop in kind of the opposite direction of the spiral you're going, and then with your fingers kind of keep the spiral going and continue the wire along the same path that it originally was in. This part is a little bit convoluted, so I would just watch the footage and try and copy what I'm doing because it's a little bit hard to explain. After you've completed the circle mostly, you're going to take your wire and cut it maybe about 1 inch or 1.5 inches underneath the spiral. And that extra wire is what you will use to finish the opposite spiral on the other side. But for now, I'm just making another one of these because I know I'll end up having to make 2, and I guess I just decided to make that other one before completing this one. So yeah, just do the exact same thing that I just did for your second earring.
It Doesn't have to be this way. I don't have to wash away the pain.
Alrighty, now that you have those two completed, you're going to grab the first one and in the opposite direction with your round nose pliers, you're going to start forming the second spiral. This one is formed in a very similar way to the first one, except that you will not stop to create that extra loop because we'll just put the dangling thing at the bottom directly on the spiral instead of in an extra loop. Even now, these spirals take me a little bit of maneuvering and manipulation to get perfectly round, and obviously they will not be perfectly round, but you can try your best. And I would just say try not to overwork the wire because then it will look a little bit chipped and then it will tarnish easier. So yeah, my recommendation would just be to get some cheap 18 gauge copper wire, play around with it a little bit, practice this shape until you get it down, and then start using your fancier wire. And then once you're happy with the shape of the first earring, you're going to take the second halfway completed swirl and do the exact same thing. And here are the two swirls all complete. Now, they obviously do not have to be symmetrical. I think it gives it a little bit of charm if they're not, and obviously things in nature are not symmetrical, so actually they kind of are. Anyways, no two leaves are the same, I think. So it's perfectly fine if they don't look quite the same. And here is where I remember that I do need 2 leaf beads for this design, so I am grabbing them off screen and putting them in my workspace so I don't forget about them. Alrighty, now you're going to grab your mushroom bead and start putting it on wire in a very similar way that we did in the previous design. That was much simpler. Take your mushroom and put it headfirst on the 22 gauge wire. Next, you're just going to create a simple loop that's completely parallel to the stem of the wire, and you're not going to bend it at all. Just going to make your loop with your round nose pliers. Next, you're going to back the mushroom up until its butt hits the loop that you just made. Make sure the loop is big enough so it doesn't slip through the hole. And then you're going to cut the wire around 1 centimeter from the head of the mushroom. And then you're going to take your round nose pliers again and create another loop. Now, I believe at this point you're going to add the leaf bead, but I accidentally forgot to record making that part, so I will just describe it briefly to you. Basically, you will take the leaf bead and slide it butt first onto the 22 gauge wire. Then you are going to create a very small loop with your round nose pliers, bend it at 90 degrees to the stem of the wire with your flat nose pliers, and then slide the bead down to hit the stopper. Next, you're going to cut the wire about 1 centimeter away from the butt of the bead again, and then create a loop with your round nose pliers. Once you've done that, you can then open up the loop at the bottom of the mushroom and slide the bead on. And then, as you can see, you will do this exact same thing for the other mushroom bead, combine it with the leaf bead, and then you can slide it onto your spiral.
It doesn't have to be this way. I don't have to wash away the pain with liquid courage. Liquid courage, I lick the scourge, I lick the scourge. Now I'm stunning.
Now that you've got the entire frame done, it's time to work on the smaller details. Now what you're going to do is take your 24 or 28 gauge wire. You just need something thin enough that you can actually wire wrap with. So I would recommend 24 or 28 gauge. 26 also works, I suppose. But you will start by looping this wire and beginning to wrap it tightly around the bottom of the spiral. So when you're holding the earring up, the very bottom spiral, you're going to start at the bottom of that spiral and begin wrapping around. You will probably need to use your flat nose pliers for a little bit of help just to make sure that the wrapping is very tight and all of the wire that you're wrapping is completely flush with the 18 gauge wire frame. As you can see, this just involves a lot of fiddling with the wire. Try not to overwork it too much or it will tarnish quicker. But yeah, definitely use your flat nose pliers if you need additional help wrapping the wire around the frame. Now, once you're satisfied with the amount of wire you have, maybe like 2 to 3 millimeters of wrapped wire, you're going to cut the excess and flatten the wire against the frame just so that it doesn't poke anyone. Now you're going to take your cutters and cut maybe around, I would say 5 to 6 inches just to be safe of that wire. I definitely did a lot less here. It was maybe more like 3 to 4 inches, but I would say 5 to 6 inches just to be safe because I'm not actually sure if I undercounted here. Now you're going to take your tiny seed beads and you're going to string one onto the wire that you're wrapping with. After it comes in contact with the spiral, you're going to keep on wrapping in the same direction that you were previously. I would say wrap the wire 3 to 4 more times before getting started with the next bead. Once you're satisfied with those wire wrappings, you're going to take your next bead, string it onto the wire, and do the exact same thing over again. So once your bead is completely slid onto the wire, you're going to start wrapping in the same direction and wrap maybe 3 to 4 more times. And then you're just going to keep on doing this process for 4 beads, I usually do. If you have room in your spiral, definitely feel free to do 5, but I usually stick with 4. The goal for this beading spiral thing was essentially to replicate a furling fern. I will insert a picture here so you know what I'm talking about, but because this earring was so nature inspired, I wanted to incorporate ferns, which are some of my favorite plants. Anyways, yeah, once you get all 4 beads on, you're going to finish up wrapping. I would wrap maybe 6 or 7 more times, and then once you're satisfied with the security of that, make sure it doesn't slide around too much. You can use your cutters to cut off the excess and then use your flat nose pliers to pinch down the end so that it doesn't poke anyone. Make sure also to position the entire wire wrapped structure so that it stops the mushroom bead just at the bottom, but it doesn't like overshoot, so that the mushroom bead is maybe slightly too much to the left or to the right, because when the earring hangs, you want the mushroom bead to naturally fall where it's supposed to be falling, and if you turn the earring around, be stopped by whatever wire structure that you just created. Alright, so when I was originally designing this earring, I thought I would stop here because I incorporated everything that I wanted to incorporate, but I did feel like the earring was a bit green heavy at the bottom, meaning that there wasn't much green going on top, and I wanted to fix that. So you will now take your medium-sized seed bead and your 22 gauge wire. I would recommend, you could also use 24, but I usually use 22 gauge wire. And you will create a tiny little charm to dangle at the top of the spiral. I'll show you how now. First, you'll want to take your seed bead and put it on the 22 gauge wire. Now, as we did with the leaf bead, you're going to take your round nose pliers, create a tiny loop, and then bend it at 90 degrees using your flat nose pliers, and then pinch it together so that the loop is closed. Now you have a little stopper for your bead. Next, you're going to take your cutters and again, cut the wire maybe about a centimeter beyond the bead, and then using your round nose pliers, again, you're going to create a little loop. Now to attach it to the actual spiral, you're going to use your flat nose pliers to open the loop slightly, and then attach it to the little loop at the top of the spiral. Now I don't remember if I told you guys to make a little loop, but if you just have a spiral and you don't have a close loop at the top, you're going to want to just use your round nose pliers to gently close the top of that spiral into a loop so that this bead stays secure and doesn't go all over the place. Once you've made sure that the spiral loop at the top is closed securely and your bead is in the right position, you'll just want to use your flat nose pliers to close the loop of the bead that you opened so that the bead stays on the spiral. Alright, and then once you're done with one earring, you just do the exact same thing with the other earring. I will leave this footage in and just put music over or something, just in case you would like a second look at what I'm doing, because I know that this part can be a little bit confusing. So yeah, feel free to skip it if you've already got it down and you've done it to both earrings.
This way, I don't have to wash away the pain with liquid courage, liquid courage. I lick the scourge, I lick the scourge. Now I'm starting to think it doesn't have to be this way.
And here's me completing the fern-like structure at the bottom of the second earring. Now I will say I am probably cutting off maybe 3 to 4 inches of 24 gauge wire here for this. I would always say err on the side of caution and cut maybe 5 to 6 inches. This way you can always just save the cuttings for another project instead of having to cut another piece and start over again. So yeah, that's just my recommendation. I always keep a scrap wire box near my desk so that I can just dump whatever I don't use and use it later for another project. And now the final step is to just take your earring hook or whatever sort of attachment that you want to use, open the loop at the bottom using your flat nose pliers, and then slide the top loop on the spiral that you made specifically for this purpose onto the loop. Like so. Sorry, my hand is a little bit off screen. Sometimes I get too distracted with what I'm doing and I forget to check my phone screen to make sure I'm still in frame. So yeah, apologies for that, but you'll see me do this for the other earring and hopefully that will be in frame. And also this is like the easiest step, so hopefully this one is a little bit more self-explanatory. And there you have it. These are my mushroom, forest inspired, fern inspired earrings. I really like this design personally. I actually don't think it does too well in my shop, which I'm always surprised about because this one's my baby, but yeah, I enjoyed this design. I hope you guys do too, and I think it's just a really fun way to incorporate a longer style of earring in case that's what you're looking for. Or if you're not, just go with the simple version of the mushroom earrings, and those are really cute as well. So there you have it. That's the second design all complete. And now it's outro time. I forget what I'm supposed to say. I think I'm supposed to plug my socials and my Etsy shop. So if you're interested, follow me on my Instagram. If you do recreate these things, please send them to me. I love seeing what you guys make from my videos on my Instagram. And obviously, if you would like to support me, please feel free. I have an Etsy shop. I do sell all of these earrings on there. And this is just a little teaser for the next video. I am going to be showing how I make these cherry earrings, which I think are one of my most popular earring designs. I really like them, but they're also pretty simple to make. So yeah, that will hopefully be the next video, which will hopefully come out soon. But I'm ambitious. I feel like I'm on a little bit of a roll here because I just recorded the voiceover for my previous video like 2 weeks ago, which is really soon for my time. So anyways, yeah, I'm hopeful. I hope you guys are enjoying these tutorials. Please let me know if you have any design that you would like me to make on video for you guys, if you're interested in that, because I would really love to make more of these tutorials. I really like making my designs accessible to people who want to make them. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will hope to see you guys very soon. Bye.
I'm starting to think it doesn't have to be this way.